And this is the point, like strategy shouldn't be easy. I think if the choices you're trying to make are easy, then you're probably not making the right choices.
Hi and welcome. I'm Ant Murphy. I'm a product coach and the founder of Product Pathways. These talks, Product Pathways, all my coaching, all my content is created to help you and to help build the next generation of amazing product people. And on that note, the following video is a recording of an in-person meetup that I did here in Sydney, Australia. And the talk was all about prioritization and product strategy. In fact, the talk was titled, "You don't have a prioritization problem, you have a strategy one." Thanks to Propel Ventures and Pendo for putting on the talk. This is all part of Propel Ventures product masterclass meetups that they do. They host these regularly and Pendo was the sponsor of the event. It was really awesome to get people in person again and to do something live like that. Really enjoy it. It's a nice, refreshing thing to just balance all the virtual work that I do these days. In the talk, I spend some time demystifying product strategy, giving you some actionable tools of where to start with product strategy, as well as talking a lot about how it relates to prioritization and giving you a more robust framework, hopefully, to help you make prioritization more effective. I'll say in advance that the audio quality is not the best. We didn't realize that the in-room or the microphones in the ceiling were the ones that were recording and not the handheld mic that I had. So I apologize in advance that the audio is not the best, but nevertheless, it's not the worst audio. You can hear me, you can understand me. So I hope that you can still get value out of it. And I just wanted to really scale that effort and get more people to hear about it and hopefully get more people doing good product strategy and good prioritization. And again, like I said, building great products. And on that note, here's the talk.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for the shout out, Amy. I've used Pendo in the past. Good tool. I agree. Very good tool. So yeah, thanks to Pendo as well for this. So I'm going to talk about product strategy and I'm going to talk about prioritization and how the two kind of pertain to each other's and how it kind of links together. It's very hard to probably do a super deep dive into strategy in like 20, 30 minutes. So I want to touch on some of the fundamentals and we'll kind of talk about how it relates to prioritization because I think the two things are really tightly coupled and you'll kind of see what I mean by that. And hopefully you'll learn a bit about that and then we can always chat more in the panel about deeper things around strategy in particular. Cool. So I am super fortunate and we'll see how much of a delay this is. I get to work with companies all over the world. I get to coach product managers from every single corner of the world as well. So it's super awesome, super privileged. I think I'm super fortunate about that. And a common complaint that I hear a lot is that prioritization is hard, right? We struggle with prioritization. I say it all the time. We really struggle with prioritization here. But when you kind of try to peel that back and try to understand why that's the case, you kind of see where I'm getting at with strategy as it relates to this, is we often say things like prioritize based on value. I don't know about you, but early in my career, I got told this as like a young product manager, prioritize based on value. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Sure, prioritize based on value. Yeah, logical. Although it turns out that that's pretty bad advice because what do we mean by value? Is it customer value? Business value? Is it revenue? Is it churn? Is it reducing costs? Is it engagement? Is it customer satisfaction? Like the list kind of can go on and on and on and on. And it's not the greatest advice because how do we define value? What do we mean by that? And what we find is that, or at least what I find in organizations, is companies try to create proxies for that, right? That's where we end up in this world. Spreadsheet prioritization. Anyone have a giant, I hope I don't single anyone out with this. You got a big spreadsheet with all these fields in it and you input values and it spits out a number with some either simple or complex formula and we use that to prioritize, right? And we're really deferring what we mean by value to said spreadsheet. Even worse, again, I hope I'm not singling anybody up, but don't need to put your hand up so we won't know. We have what I call the blessing game, which is we defer it. Oh, I don't need to prioritize value. I'll just get the CEO to prioritize everything or the founder. It's we escalate it, right? Oh, we can't work out this trade-off, so let's just push it up to somebody else to work out, and we defer it. And I call it the blessing game because it's like they really own the backlog, right? And everything needs to kind of get their blessing before we do it. So yeah, a bit of tongue in cheek. But we've all seen this, right? So we're getting the strategy. we all seen a variation of this. This is pretty simplified, but this is it. Well, when you think about value, it actually, what we're trying to do, and this is part of the problem, is we're trying to define value down here. We're trying to prioritize down here. So we're just looking at a whole bunch of ideas and everything's fair game, and we're trying to prioritize that, right? And hence the spreadsheets, etc. But when you really think about it, the reason why many places do this is because they're actually missing the kind of middle piece, right? They're missing strategy. And I won't try and say it better because I think John Cutler says it the best, which is when you don't have a strategy, you're just stuck with a whole bunch of good ideas, because there's plenty of good ideas, and you've got no way to prioritize them, right? That's essentially what's happening. And we're creating these proxies for prioritization is what's going on. So when you really think about it, and this has been my experience, it's rarely a prioritization problem, but rather it's a strategy problem. That strategy layer is missing, and we don't have anything to ground things against. So why does this occur? When you think about it, value starts at the top and works down, and so does prioritization. So we need a strategy in order to prioritize, and probably the most prolific thing that I see the most. In fact, I think, Propel, Amy, your research shows it, right? Like missing strategy, no way to do that. So hence we end up with those situations. So when you think about these two things, prioritization and strategy aren't mutually exclusive. They're kind of the same thing and they work together, and you need one. You can't really do one without the other. And I'll get into the crux of that in a bit. But this is a prolific problem because what the hell is strategy? You're probably all sitting there thinking that. You want an answer? That's pretty much it. I'm going to give you an answer because this is a very elusive term, and I get really frustrated by how elusive it is and how much we can't seem to just distill it down and make it very simple. So I want to try and make it very simple for you and make it actionable. So part of the problem here is that if you do want Google, I don't think we do ourselves any favors on this. If you actually go onto Google, maybe it's changed, but when I first did a talk around this was the case, and I've since written a few articles because of it. If you Google what a product strategy is, you'll get it as a vision and a roadmap, which, as you saw in the triangle that I had before, it's not. It sits in between. So this is really bad advice, so we're not doing ourselves any favors here. Instead, a product strategy is a set of choices. I'm personally heavily influenced by the book Playing to Win by Roger L. Martin. He says strategy is a set of choices. I think it's just a very great and simple way to explain strategy and to kind of break it down. So I'll make it a bit more tangible. So if strategy is a set of choices, then product strategy is a set of choices about your product. It's simply choices to do something, to be something, to target a certain person or customer or market segment, to chase after a certain market or do something in a certain sequence. And every single time you make a choice, you're also making a choice to not do something. And that's probably, that latter point is probably the more important part, right? Who are we not targeting? And what are we not doing? All of those types of things. So essentially a product strategy is that. And it's different than a vision and a roadmap because your vision is the aspirational thing. And then your strategy is essentially the set of choices that you're making in order to help you realize that vision. So that is a set of choices that we're going to take in order to achieve that vision. And then your roadmap, I think Gianna Basto says it very, very well, is the first prototype of your strategy. So this is you now turning your strategy and those set of choices into actionable, tangible things. And then it's a first prototype because no plan survives contact with the enemy. And you're going to do those things on the roadmap and realize that you were wrong and you're going to have to change the roadmap. And your roadmap's going to pivot a lot more than your strategy. Mike Tyson famously said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. I think this is a good analogy for strategy, maybe a bit of a brutal one, but it's a good analogy for me. You can think of your strategy about how you're going to deal with being punched in the face, right? So your roadmap's going to change when things happen, but are you going to run? Are you going to hide? You're going to duck? You're going to fight back? These are all strategic choices, right? Strategy. Okay, still very fluffy, so let's make it a bit more tangible. I was trying to pick some examples, and I thought I'll do this because, I don't know, Australia, and I think it's pretty good because they're an Aussie bank and they're down in Melbourne. So for those who don't know, our bank is one of the neobanks, although it's been completely bought out by Bendigo Bank now, but they're down in Melbourne and Adelaide largely, but they're one of the neobanks. But I think they're a really good example, and they talk about a lot of the things that they do from a product point of view. and it's all public. So this is nothing like hidden or hidden secrets. This is all from the blog, to be honest, actually. So Up is pretty laser focused on the choices that they've made and the strategy that they have. So if you read their blog, they talk about things like this. They are a digital bank and they're completely branchless, right? So they've made choices. So choice number one, they're a digital bank. Choice number two, no branches, right? Because there are some digital banks with a few branches. No branches. That's another choice, right? As a result, this starts to impact the way that we think about work and the way that we prioritize, because if we've made the choice to be a digital bank and we've made the choice to have no branches, then as Daniel says here, the interactions that they have with their customers are far and few between. So does it impact these choices, right? So anyone who's gotten a bank card recently, and this is kind of the status quo, right? And they talk about this in the blog. And as a result, this is going to be one of the first physical or tangible interactions a customer is going to have with them. And now, if you weren't a digital bank, this might be completely fine, because we're not digital. They might have had several interactions until this point, several interactions that we could have delighted them, given them a beyond, a great experience, hopefully. And then this is fine. But because they don't have that, because they made the choice to be a digital bank, which also means they made the choice to not have those things, then this is potentially not okay. And for them, it wasn't okay. They decided to do something different. And in fact, I am an Up customer, full disclosure, don't have any shares in it, they're owned by Bendigo Bank anyways, but this is the experience that they ended up building. In fact, they talk about this in the blog too. I can't remember whether they said who actually raised it, but somebody actually challenged it and said, why are we doing this? Because we're spending more money. This is costing us more money as a business, right? Wouldn't our customers prefer us to reinvest that money back to them, as opposed to just making this delightful experience? And that's a very fair question and a very fair challenge. And now, if you're really clear on the strategy, the answer to that ends up being, no, we need to invest in this because we're a digital bank and we have no branches, and this is the first interaction we have with our customers. So prioritization becomes easier. But I think it also illustrates a really key part about strategy, which is these choices aren't easy, and they shouldn't be easy. They should feel hard. And the fact that they challenged it and they had that constructive conversation about, should we actually do this? Is this something that we should be doing? Should we just put the money back into our customers? I think is part of the point. I have not sat in any strategy conversations with product teams and even leadership and executives and stuff where we've all walked into a room, 20 minutes later, walked out and been like, shook hands and said, yep, that's easy. We know exactly what we're going to do. No, it's always hard. Always takes multiple hours, in fact, sometimes several days. And this is the point, like strategy shouldn't be easy. I think if the choices you're trying to make are easy, then you're probably not making the right choices. You probably need to dig a little bit deeper and force yourself a little bit harder, right? And there's a good saying, which is it's not a virtue or it's not a principle until it costs you something. And I think strategy is very much that. Strategic choices should cost you something. You should be making a choice to do something, and that should be at the cost of something else. Cool. So I know this is still very fluffy because it's like choices. What's choices? How does it look? I want to know, like, give me a template to fill out. I'll try to indulge that without giving you something that's going to send you in the wrong direction. So what does it look like? Well, I think this is part of the other problem with strategy is because it is choices, it's so contextual that it's very hard to say, this is the one and only way to do product strategy, because there's not. Like if you're a health tech company, your choices that you need to make are very different and probably have a vastly different impact than if you're like a media company or something like that, right? So it's hard to say exactly what it is. But like I said, I'm going to indulge you. So don't think I'm just going to say it depends and just leave you with that, because I hate that personally. I hate it when people did it to me. So I try my best to never do that to anybody else as well. So there are some things that you can do and some places you can start. Although don't take this as a checklist, take this as a place to start. So Plan to Win, of course, I think is a good reference point. Roger L. Martin and AJ Leffley outlined these 5 questions for strategy. So essentially, first question being that top level question of vision. What is your winning aspirations? What is the thing that you're trying to strive towards? And then you get into the kind of who question, which is where you're going to play. You know, out of all the customers and market segments you could focus on, what are you going to focus on? Who are you not going to target? and then start to talk about how you're going to win inside that, which is then choices to beat the competition. What choices are you going to make that are going to be different to the competition? This is where we get into things like moats or like, 7 powers and those types of things, which is when we get really, really deep in kind of the strategy realm. And then he gets into the last 2 questions about like what capabilities are necessary and what management systems. And as he says in the book, these are really important because if you just answer the top stuff, so this book's really popular for the 2nd and 3rd question. So everyone talks about where you're going to play and how you're going to win. That's not entirely the full picture, and I think it's missing some of the point too. Because if you define those 2 things, but you can't define the more detailed stuff, like what actual capabilities do you need to make that actually turn that into a real vision, which by the way, you might not have the capabilities, so you might need to invest into it, again, costing you something. If you can't do that, then it's just a pipe dream, as he says, right? You're just wishful thinking. You just say, we're going to win this way, and then, no, you're not, right? If you don't want to do that, what I tend to start, or at least encourage with my clients, is to just start with something really simple. And this is a 1-pager. This is one that I've used several times. You can get it, but I'm not advocating for you to do it. Use this one. You can create your own. You can see that it's largely modeled off playing to win anyways. But the point being is like, just start really lightweight. If it's really hard for you to just think really meta about the choices that will make it around strategy, you can just start here and just start really high level. Like, what is your winning aspiration? What are some of the OKRs that you're going to just chase? Where are you focusing on? Like, where are you going to play? What key considerations you have? And really the intent behind this is just to work as a bit of a forcing function to make you ask yourself those questions. And what I tend to do when I coach with clients is I kind of move them away from this over time, because this is meant to prompt them to think about those questions, and then we start to do it more intuitively, and then we get deeper. And if you really want something deeper, you can use this one, which is a longer document, but not really the point. I think you can graduate to this if you really want to, but you can also make up your own. I think it's more about what choices do you need to make about your product in your area, and to start to actually define them and define those things. Cool. So let's round it back out by going back to prioritization. And what I just want to touch on here is that because these 2 things aren't mutually exclusive, it means that the whole time we're going through doing strategy and making those choices, we are making prioritization choices. Do we target this market over another market, right? We're making, it's a priority there. Like, do we do this one first over another one? Because sometimes it's not about like, oh, we're just going to do this and ignore everybody else. Sometimes it's like sequencing, right? Let's focus here, and then eventually we'll get there. Kind of like when the iPhone came out, they criticized them for no B2B features, but they had a roadmap. They knew you're all going to get there. And it's a prioritization decision, and it's a strategy call, right? Like, how are you going to beat BlackBerry? By starting here and then working your way up. And they had a clear strategy on that. So prioritization happens throughout the whole thing. And as a result too, prioritization actually happens in layers. So prioritization is not some activity you do at the bottom. It's something that you do continuously throughout your whole strategy, all the way through to, do we put this button here over somewhere else, right? So to make this a little bit more tangible into a better diagram than just like a really fuzzy triangle. So we've got our strategy, we've made some choices. The next step there is to start to model our strategy in terms of outcomes. Now, I think this is really important. This is why I put it in here, and I think it's really important to kind of dive into, is because sometimes we do our strategy and then we go, great, strategy, big initiative, right? Like big project to realize it, or big bet. And then we try to break that down. And really what we should be doing is challenging ourselves to say, well, how do we get smaller in our focus area? So what I mean by that, give an example. Let's just say, hypothetically, bad strategy, bad goal, but let's just say we want to increase revenue because everyone wants to do that. Well, what are the many different ways or lever points that we can do in order to increase revenue? Well, we can increase conversion, we can decrease churn, we can reduce our costs, we can do a whole bunch of stuff, right? And then you can get even deeper in that. Let's just say, okay, let's focus on acquisition. Okay, so we could increase conversion, but we could also reduce the drop-off at this step. We could get even deeper than that. We could try and increase click-through rate of this exact screen, right? And the beauty about this is you're again making prioritization decisions here, and you're also making strategic choices. We're going to choose to focus on increasing conversion over churn for now. maybe churn's going to get a bigger problem and we're going to flip on that, right? But then when we get to the next part, which is then defining what opportunities exist underneath that, we've already started to skinny the field. Because what we're looking for is the intersect between the strategic choice we've made and that goal that we've set, and all of the customer problems that exist in the universe. And we should be able to cut that down, right? So the prioritization also becomes more manageable, because rather than trying to prioritize 50 customer opportunities, we're actually saying, well, let's just look at the ones that are going to help us increase click-through rate here. To give another tangible example of this, this is a real example from a client that wanted to grow. So it was a bank, you can probably work that out, but they wanted to grow home loans, obviously. And home loans was actually something that they were strategically invested into, because home loans is one of the largest financial decisions we're going to make in our lives as individuals. And often when we do that, we also bring across all of our bank accounts, credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. So home loans is a very strategic lever. So if you think about from a higher level as a company, they were actually making a strategic choice to focus in and prioritize home loans. So we're going to invest more into home loans and we're going to lower investment in other areas. And that's a strategic choice. Now, the home loans leadership team was trying to work out what do we do with all this extra money? What are the lever points that we could do? And we're doing some discovery and some research. So this is another important piece, which is that strategic choices and any type of decision making is best done when it's informed, right? And data kind of informed as well. So we shouldn't be making these choices just on a whim, right? We should be investing our time into getting data and doing discovery and trying to understand things in order to inform our choices, right? So we did exactly that. And we're trying to work out what's a place or an underserved need inside the home loans market that maybe was an opportunity for us, right? And what we found was, and this is changing, so this was a few years back, but what we found was that if the time it takes to get approval, so if you didn't have pre-approval and there was a really nice house and the auction was on Saturday or Sunday and you saw it on a Wednesday, good luck getting pre-approval and turning up to that auction. Some people have done it. Maybe you've all experienced this too close to home. So we saw that this was a big pain point. This was a pain point for many, especially in Australia, when Sydney and Melbourne market is largely dominated by auctions, right? So the problem space and the opportunity that we saw in order to help grow home loans was, could we solve this problem? And the solution ends up turning out to be, how do we reduce turnaround time so people can make it to the auction? But if you think about this too, we're very laser focused here. So when you end up going to market and you end up doing like marketing messaging and promotions, et cetera, we're not just saying like, get pre-approval in, we're trying to get it down to 24 hours or same day eventually. But like, we got it down to 3 days initially was the goal. But we're not saying like, get pre-approval in before the weekend, right? Or something like that. We're actually saying like, yeah, don't want to miss that auction, don't want to miss that house. Like, well, we can give you approval in time. So we're really laser focused. And then again, messaging is really targeted as a result of that. And yes, we're potentially alienating other people, but this is the point. This is strategic choices. And we're focusing on that. So yeah. So once we have opportunities, then we finally get to the bottom with all those great ideas and solutions. And if you see here just the sheer number of solutions at the bottom, it's hard to just start there at the bottom and try and prioritize all of them. And that's what we're often doing. Places that are struggling with prioritization, they're doing that. They've got, I don't even know, I'm not going to count them all, like 9, 10, like solutions at the bottom. They're trying to prioritize that. When it's like, well, let's just back up a little. Let's make some strategic choices. Let's prioritize 1 OKR. Let's prioritize 2 opportunities within that. And then lo and behold, we have like 3 solutions that we need to prioritize. And guess what? You could just A/B test them or do something like that, right? Do some user testing. And then prioritization solved, right? So another quote, Einstein has been attributed to say, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. You can think of prioritization and strategy in this way. I want you to spend 55 minutes up here and 5 minutes down there, right? Invest your time up the top, work your way back up the chain, and only get to the bottom right at the last minute. And that should make that very, very easy, and you should be able to do it in 5 minutes. So I think if you take anything away from the last, 20 or 30 minutes or whatever I've spoken for, it's probably this. Prioritization shouldn't be hard. It really shouldn't. It's only made hard because we skip those steps. We skip the crucial steps. We don't have strategy. We don't make those choices, and we jump straight to the bottom, and we're trying to prioritize this long list of ideas. The truth is, there's always a long list of ideas, and just not enough time. So we actually need to work our way back up. So that's it. Thank you.
So I hope you got as much value out of it as the people in the audience there. We got a lot of good positive feedback from it. I spoke to many people after the meetup and some of the key things that resonated with them. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Throw it down in the comments, what part of that resonated, or maybe even what action or what is that one thing that you're going to do differently after listening to that talk. I'll leave it just on that. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate the support, and I'll see you at the next one.